The night the silver vanished, the moon did not simply dim. It screamed, not with sound, but with absence. One moment, Nyema village was bathed in soft celestial light, the kind that made the river look like poured honey and turned the elders' faces into something ancient and sacred. And then, nothing. A darkness so complete, so sordid, that children froze mid-laugh, and mothers grabbed their little ones without knowing why. The drums stopped, the crickets stopped, even the wind held its breath. And somewhere, deep in the shadows of a silk cotton tree at the edge of the village, a spider smiled. Welcome to African Folklore by Chidi. While you're here, please hit the subscribe button and drop your view on this story. And tell us where in the world you're watching from. Because this tale, it is not just a story, it is a warning. Now, back to that smile. His name was Anansi. And if you have heard that name before, then you already know. Trouble was never far behind it. He was not tall. He was not built like a warrior. He did not carry a spear or command an army. What Anansi carried was something far more dangerous than any weapon ever forged in fire. He carried a mind that never slept, a tongue that could convince the sun to rise at midnight if it pleased him, and eyes, sharp, patient, ancient eyes that saw everything everyone else missed. The village of Nyema knew him well. Too well, some said. The elders would smile cautiously when his name was mentioned. The way you smile at a fire that keeps you warm but could burn your house down. Children adored him. Animals feared him. And the spirits watched him the way experienced swimmers watch a new current, with respect and with caution. But even Anansi had something he could not outsmart, something that gnawed at him in the quiet hours between dusk and dawn, when the world was still and there was nothing to trick, no puzzle to unravel, no rival to outmaneuver. It was a hunger, not for food, not for gold, but for something he could never quite name. Until the night he looked up at the sky and finally understood what it was. He wanted what Nyame had. Nyame, the sky god, the ancient one, the keeper of all that shimmered and all that endured. To speak of Nyame was to speak of the beginning of things, the first light, the first rain, the breath that filled the lungs of the first man. Nyame did not walk among mortals. He did not argue or bargain or visit the marketplace. He simply was vast, eternal, and luminous. And at the heart of his celestial palace, locked within a chamber spun from starlight and sealed with the breath of 1,000 sunsets, was the silver of Nyame. Not a coin, not a trinket, not something you could hold in your hand without consequence. The silver of Nyame was power in its purest form. It controlled the pool of tides and the rhythm of seasons. It fed the moonlight that guided fishermen home. It kept the balance between what grew and what withered, between what was remembered and what was forgotten. The elders of Nyema said that when the silver glowed strong, the yam harvest would overflow and the rivers would run clear as laughter. But when it dimmed, even slightly, the earth felt it. Roots would weaken, rain would hesitate, and something beneath the soil, something ancient and anxious, would begin to stir. Nyema had been feeling that stirring for 3 seasons now. The drought had come quietly, the way the worst things always do. First the small streams dried up, then the larger ones slowed. The yam mounds cracked, and the harvest came back half of what it should have been. Children who should have been growing were instead thinning. Elders who had seen drought before shook their heads slowly, because this one felt different. It did not feel like weather. It felt like punishment. It felt like absence, like something vital had been subtracted from the world. And no one could agree on what. Anansi watched all of this. He watched the women walk further each morning to find water. He watched the chief consult the priests, and the priests consult the sky, and the sky offer nothing in return. He watched the village he had lived beside his whole life slowly, quietly begin to bend under invisible weight. And the more he watched, the more a thought took root inside him. A thought that started small, almost reasonable, and then grew with the kind of quiet ferocity that thoughts do when they go unchallenged. If the silver of Nyame controlled all of this, the water, the harvest, the light, the balance, then why did one God get to hold it alone? Why should the fate of every mother, every child, every fisherman and farmer in Nyema rest in divine hands they could neither see nor reach? Was that wisdom? Was that justice? Or was it simply the oldest form of power, the kind that justifies itself by refusing to be questioned? Anansi told himself he was asking on behalf of Nyema. He told himself it was righteous. He told himself many things that night, sitting beneath the silk cotton tree with his 8 legs folded beneath him and his mind spinning faster than his silk. But if you had looked into his eyes in that moment, really looked, you would have seen something that had nothing to do with the village. You would have seen a spider who had spent his entire life being the cleverest creature in every room he entered, and who had finally, quietly, decided that one room was not enough. He wanted the sky. And so, on the night of the new moon, when Nyame's gaze was softest and the celestial guards were stretched thinnest across the heavens, Anansi did what no creature born of earth had ever dared to do. He opened his body and pulled from himself a thread. Not ordinary silk. This was something he had been spinning in secret for months, feeding it with moonbeam fragments and whispered riddles and the concentrated patience of a mind that never, ever stopped working. A thread so fine it was invisible to the eye, so strong it could bear the weight of ambition itself. He aimed it at the sky, and he climbed. The air changed above the clouds. Anansi had expected cold. He had expected wind, resistance, perhaps the sting of lightning across his back as a warning. What he had not expected was beauty. The space between the earth and Nyame's palace was unlike anything his quick, calculating mind had prepared for. It was not empty. It hummed, with a low, steady resonance that he felt not in his ears, but somewhere behind his chest, as if the universe itself had a heartbeat, and he had just pressed his hand against it. Stars drifted past him like slow lanterns. The darkness was not dark at all up here. It was deep blue and violet and silver threaded, alive in ways the night sky below could only gesture at from a distance. Anansi paused on his thread and looked down. Nyema was a scatter of warm orange lights far below, fires in the compounds, torches at the edge of the market square. It looked fragile from up here, precious and fragile, like something cupped in 2 hands that might spill at any moment. He thought of the children. He thought of the cracked yam mounds. He thought of the chief's face, the way grief had settled into it over 3 seasons until it looked like something permanently carved. Then he kept climbing. The celestial guards were exactly where his calculations predicted. 2 great eagle spirits, whose wings spanned the width of storm clouds, circling the outer gates of Nyame's palace in slow, magnificent arcs. Their eyes burned amber. Their feathers were edged in gold fire. Any other creature would have turned back, would have descended quietly and pretended the whole journey was a dream. Anansi did not turn back. He waited until both gods completed their circle and turned their backs in the same moment. Just 4 seconds of overlap. A gap so small, only a mind like his would have noticed it existed. Then he moved, not with speed, but with the particular grace of something that has already rehearsed every movement 1,000 times in its mind. He slipped through the gate like a secret slipping through teeth. Silent, effortless, gone. Inside Nyame's palace, the light was overwhelming. It came from everywhere and nowhere, spilling from the walls, pooling on the floors, rising from beneath, like the building itself was made of compressed sunrise. The architecture was not designed for mortal eyes. Corridors that curved in ways corridors should not be able to curve. Chambers that appeared to have no ceilings, only sky continuing upward into infinity. Anansi moved through it quickly, his thread trailing behind him, as insurance, his eyes scanning, calculating, adapting. And then he found it. The chamber was sealed with silence. Not a door. Silence, thick and deliberate. The kind that presses against your ears and makes you suddenly aware of every sound your own body makes. Anansi stood before it and felt, for the first time in his life, genuinely small, not insulted by the feeling, just aware of it. He noted it, the way he noted everything, filed it somewhere in his vast interior library, and stepped forward. The silver of Nyame sat at the center of the chamber on a pedestal carved from cloud and obsidian. It was not large. That was the first surprise. Anansi had imagined something enormous. A great gleaming mass, a throne of radiance. Instead, it was the size of a mango, perfectly spherical, rotating slowly in midair, just above its resting place. Its light did not blare. It breathed, pulsing gently, warmly, like something alive, like something that knew it was being watched. Anansi reached out his hand. "I am taking this," he whispered, not to anyone in the room, but to himself, the way you confirm a decision out loud to stop your hands from shaking. For Nyema, for balance, because what belongs to everyone should not be locked away by one. His fingers closed around it. The silver did not resist. It did not shock him or burn him or cry out. It simply settled into his grip, warm, heavy, real. And for one breathless moment, Anansi felt everything. Every tide on every shore, every seed pushing through every layer of soil, every child's exhale in the dark. The weight of all of it, pouring through his palm, up his arm, into his chest like swallowed fire. It was extraordinary. It was terrifying. And then the sky cracked open. Not thunder. This was different. Thunder was weather. This was intention. A sound like the universe clearing its throat. The walls of the palace shuddered. The light shifted from warm to white, to something that had no color in human language. And from deep within that colorless brilliance, a voice descended, not loud, but absolute. The kind of voice that does not need volume because it is made of the same material as gravity. Anansi, just his name, nothing else. And Anansi's 8 legs, which had carried him through every escape he had ever engineered, went momentarily still. He ran, back through the curving corridors, back through the gate, the guards now awake and screaming behind him in voices like storm winds. Down his tread, hand over hand, the silver burning in his grip now, burning with a heat that was not temperature, but something else, something moral and insistent, something that whispered, "You know, this is not right," with every pulse. He reached the earth just before dawn, If you are still watching up to now, type "I'm still here" in the comment section and tell us your view. Because what happens next, what Nyame does, and what Anansi discovers about himself is the part of this story that nobody sees coming. He landed in Nyema with the silver hidden beneath his wrapper, his breath ragged, his legs shaking for the first time in his remembered life. He sat in the center of the village square and waited for sunrise, and sunrise did not come. Or the sky remained the bruised purple of 3 a.m. The birds did not sing. The roosters, usually so reliable, so arrogantly punctual, was silent. Even the insects had gone quiet, as if the world was listening for something. The village woke into wrongness. "The moon," a woman said first, stepping out of her compound and looking up. "Where is the moon?" "It's morning," said her husband behind her. "The moon sets at morning." "The sun, then," she said quietly. "Where is the sun?" They stood together in the bruised purple silence and did not have an answer. Within an hour, all of Nyema was outside. Men, women, children, elders, all standing in compounds and pathways and the market square, all looking at the sky with the particular expression of people who have just realized something they counted on absolutely has been removed without warning. The chief called for the priests. The priests poured libations and called the ancestors. The ancestors, for once, did not answer. Only Anansi sat still, and felt the silver pulse against his side, and felt the heat of it spread through his ribs, and felt something new, something he had never once in his long clever life been required to feel. Shame, not because he was caught, not because he was afraid, but because, in the dark of the panic around him, in the faces of the children who did not understand why morning had not arrived, in the voice of the old weaver woman who began to cry softly because the dark reminded her of the night her husband died, he began, slowly and with great reluctance, to understand the distance between what he had told himself and what was actually true. He had not taken the silver for Nyema. He had taken it because he wanted to prove that he could. And then the sky opened again. And this time, Nyame came down. He did not arrive in fire. That surprised everyone, including Anansi. The village had expected destruction, expected the wrath of the heavens to arrive the way wrath always did in the stories. Loud, consuming, final. Instead, Nyame descended through the frozen sky the way morning should have descended. Slowly, with immense quiet, with a kind of patient enormity that made the air feel thicker and more serious. He was not dressed in thunder. He was dressed in the ordinary colors of first light, amber and rose, and the pale gold that comes just before the sun breaks the horizon. His face, when it appeared, was not a face of rage. It was a face of grief. He stood in the center of Nyema's market square and looked at the village, at the frightened faces, the silent children, the elders on their knees. And when his eyes finally settled on Anansi, they did not flash with divine fury. They simply held him. The way a father holds a child with his gaze, when the child has done something that causes not just anger, but a deeper, more complicated sorrow. "Anansi," Nyame said. His voice was not the crack of judgment from the palace. Down here, in the dust of the market square, it was quieter, almost tired. "Do you know what you are holding?" Anansi straightened. Even now, even with the shame burning in his chest and the silver burning through his wrapper, he straightened. Because whatever else he was, he had never been someone who shrank. "Power," he said. "Balance. something that affects every person in this village, and yet no one in this village was ever given a say in how it works. Nyame was quiet for a moment. You climbed my thread, Anansi continued, his voice steadier now, finding its rhythm. You made me, and you gave me this mind that sees what others miss, this mind that asks why the hunger of an entire village should be subject to the mood of a sky. So, yes, I took it, because I believed that what serves humanity should not be kept above humanity's reach. Around him, the village was absolutely still. Nyame looked at him for a long time. Then, Yum, and this was the moment that broke something open in Anansi's chest. Nyame nodded. Yes, the sky god said softly. That is what you told yourself. The words landed like a stone dropping into still water, rings spreading outward. Anansi opened his mouth and closed it again. Tell me, Nyame said, and his tone was not cruel, but it was precise, the way a blade is precise. Before you climbed, before you spun your thread and made your plan, did you come to me? Did you speak to the priests, or the elders, or the river spirits who also hold part of this balance? Did you sit with the village and ask what they believed would help them? Or did you sit alone beneath your tree, convince yourself of a reason, and then do what you had already decided to do? Silence, the kind that echoes. Anansi's hands, still wrapped around the silver beneath his cloth, went still. The drought did not come from me, Nyame said, turning slowly to look at the village now, addressing not just Anansi, but everyone gathered in that square. It came from the earth itself, from years of taking without thanking, of boundaries broken between communities, of fishermen netting more than the rivers could restore, of forests cleared faster than the rains could replace. The imbalance was already here, in the earth, in the choices made by human hands, season after season. He paused. The silver responded to that imbalance by dimming, because that is what it does. It reflects the state of the relationship between heaven and earth. It cannot be forced bright. It cannot be stolen into usefulness. It can only be restored. Then how? Anansi asked, and his voice, for the first time in the telling of the story, for the first time in its long, clever life, cracked slightly at the edge. How is it restored? By returning what was taken, Nyame said simply, not the silver, what was taken before the silver. Trust, accountability, the willingness to be small before something larger than your own certainty. Anansi looked down at his hands, the silver pulsed against his palm. And now that he understood what the heat was, now that he could name it, he felt it fully. Every choice that had led to the drought, every fish taken beyond measure, every boundary crossed and not acknowledged, every moment a village or a person had let cleverness substitute for conscience, all of it recorded in that small glowing sphere like a living document of human decisions. He had not stolen power. He had stolen a mirror, and it had shown him something he was not prepared to see. He took the silver out from beneath his wrapper. The village gasped, because even in the sunless morning, even in the pale bruised light of a sky without its rhythm, the silver was extraordinary. It turned people's faces luminous. It made the children's eyes go wide and wet with something they could not name. Even the elders, who had seen things in their long years that would have folded I, younger person, in half, went quiet in its presence. Anansi held it out toward Nyame. I return this, he said. Not because I'm afraid of you. He looked up and held the god's gaze steadily, but because I understand it now. And understanding it means knowing I was wrong about what it was and why I wanted it. Nyame did not reach for it immediately. You are the cleverest creature I have made, he said, and that is exactly why I allowed you to take it. Anansi blinked. You allowed? Do you think those guards would have left a 4-second gap by accident? A pause. A slow, patient, almost smile on a face that had existed since before the first rain. I have been watching you spin that thread for months, Anansi. I watched you the night you first looked up at the sky and decided to blame the heavens for the earth's pain. I watched you reason yourself into righteousness, and I knew the only way to break that reasoning was to let it complete itself, to let you reach what you were certain you deserved, and then let you feel what it actually was. The silence in Nyema's market square was not frightened anymore. It was sacred. The trial was never in my palace, Nyame said quietly. It was always here, in this square, in this moment. Anansi placed the silver in Nyame's hands, and the sky broke open. Not violently, not with drama, but with the specific, generous grace of something restored to its right place. Color flooded back into the air. The sun did not simply rise. It arrived, as if it had been waiting politely just beyond the horizon and was now finally invited in. The birds erupted. The roosters, slightly embarrassed by their lateness, crowed with extra conviction. Somewhere at the edge of the village, a child laughed, and the sound of it was so sudden and so pure that 3 elders pressed their hands to their chests, as if checking that their hearts were still there. The silver rose back into the sky and found its place, not locked away this time. Or perhaps it had never truly been locked. Perhaps the lock had only ever existed in the story Anansi told himself about a god who hoarded power. A story that was easier than the truth. That balance is not given or taken. It is maintained by all of us, by small choices made in the everyday, by fishermen and farmers and mothers and tricksters, and even gods choose it again and again to return what they have borrowed from the world. Nyam did not punish Anansi. He gave him something instead. The story itself. The memory of what it felt like to hold the silver and to feel the weight of every human decision pressed into its palm. Carry these, Nyame told him. Not as a wound, as a knowing. Anansi walked back to his silk cotton tree at the edge of the village. He sat for a long time without spinning anything, without planning anything, without thinking 3 steps ahead of the moment he was in. He simply sat and breathed and let the restored sunlight fall on his back. The village of Nyema did not forget what happened that morning. They told it to their children and their children's children, and the story changed shape slightly with each telling, the way all true stories do. But the center of it remained the same. The night the sky went dark, the spider who climbed to heaven, the god who came not with fire, but with a question. And the moment a clever mind finally became a wise one, not by gaining something, but by giving it back. Even the cleverest must bow to wisdom, for power taken without balance will always demand a price. Now, before this story ends, a question for you. Was Anansi wrong to challenge the heavens? Do you believe knowledge and power should be shared, or are some things meant to rest in higher hands? And have you ever convinced yourself you deserve something, only to discover the truth was more complicated than your certainty? Leave your thoughts below. This community lives in the comments. and every single perspective matters. And if you think that was Anansi's greatest trick, wait until you hear our next story. Subscribe to African Folklore by Chidi so you never miss a story. These are not just tales. They are the wisdom of generations, told the way they were always meant to be heard, with heart, with weight, and with the truth that hides inside every legend. We will see you in the next one.